Tuned to NBC Radio broadcasting from studios located at Richmond Hill in Kingstown, programming for the 22nd day in the month of April. And this is Ian Soufriere, the morning edition. Joining us this morning, Prime Minister Dr. the Honourable Ralph Gonsalves and also Professor Richard Robertson of the UE Seismic Research Centre, the lead scientist on the ground, keeping an eye on Soufriere for us, along with his team. And first of all, we say good morning to you, Prime Minister. Good morning and welcome back.
Good morning, good morning.
And good morning to Professor. Good to have you back as well. Professor? I think Professor is muted there. Good morning to you, Professor. All right. I believe he may have stepped away for a moment there. But Prime Minister, I believe in the meantime we can get the ball rolling while we await Professor to come. Yes, Professor, are you with us now? Professor Robertson? All right. I'm not sure if he is having some challenges with his microphone this morning.
No, I'm fine.
I was a bit worried.
Morning, Richie.
Good morning, Prime Minister.
All right, Professor Robertson, as usual, we start with you in your update. What has changed since our last discussion yesterday? And just give us a briefing of that.
Right, so the seismic activity continues the pattern established after the 18th April explosion. That is, we continue to have small, long period and hybrid earthquakes. What has happened within the last 24 hours or so, probably a little bit more, is that the rate of occurrence of these long period and hybrid earthquakes has increased. We have had a few rock falls and some VTs, but no seismic tremor. In other words, no record of any sort of venting or explosions at the volcano. So the pattern of the periods when you might have explosions and then you have intervening long periods of hybrids and long period events continues. And if anything, within the last 24 hours, a little bit more, we begin to have a lot more of them for some reason. So that's the only state change. Otherwise, the overall pattern continues.
Okay, where we're seeing that increase, Professor, is that indicative of any major change that is about to happen in what we have right now?
That's a good question. It's unclear what it exactly means. It could mean that the movement that you had, remember I was saying that maybe what's happening is at the volcano currently is that there's a sort of a battle between the forces that wish to push the material out and the forces that are resisting it. And what we're seeing is the result of that. So if you think of it, maybe the forces that are resisting it has sort of have stopped things from moving so much at the top, and therefore it's trying to force its way through at a sort of a faster rate at the bottom. So it might be indicative of the fact that a dome or something is resisting the movement of material upwards, and it's therefore it's started to indicate that stuff below is trying to come out. Or it might be there's a new set of material. We've always spoken about the fact that you could have gas-rich magma that is deeper down, or that's just below the stuff that came out, trying to get to the surface. It might be that. So I think the next few days will tell whether or not you simply have another explosion, or maybe you have some sort of dome growth. Given the conditions that you have up there now, you don't have. I think most people realize is that what the volcano has done is to destroy the 2021 dome that was put in from last year. And it's also destroyed a substantial amount of the 79 dome that was there. And what you have now is a huge crater at the top, which, for all intents and purposes, is open. We don't have any clear evidence that there is any blockage on it. So it should be possible for material to come out without too much resistance at the top, unless the resistance is itself, that it's moving slow. And therefore, it's sort of at the top solidifying, and therefore it's kind of almost plugging or stopping itself. Apart from that, there is nothing else that will provide are forced to unable to pressurize. And maybe if it does have a new batch come through because of the condition at the top, the kind of explosions you have might be less vigorous than you had before. But it really depends also on if something new comes through, how much gas it has in it. So we would be surprised if as I said, it's changed, and usually you look for changes at volcanoes to tell you what it's doing. The current change is that you're basically having more of these particular kind of events that you have an intervening period. They're not sort of slowing down. They seem to be slightly, they increase significantly in the last 24 hours, and they sort of haven't gone back down. And if anything, the only interpretation we have is that something is moving or trying to move faster than it was before. And it may come out soon as an explosion, or it may come out as some dome growing faster or a dome growing that wasn't there before.
Okay, Professor, I know you mentioned in previous updates about the process of it building a dome and then destroying the dome. And is this a process that can continue over an indefinite period if this is being observed?
No, I'd expect that it has a finite amount of gas-rich magma that got this whole system going. It has a batch of it that came up. Now the source of that material that is much deeper down, the chamber from which it came, that became overpressurized and that started the process going. We don't know enough about that, but certainly we think it came up as a finite amount, a batch, say, of gas-rich magma that has now gotten to the surface, and that's what is playing out currently. So in that sense, it will have there will come a time where the balance between the forces that's stopping the sort of this magma from coming out and the forces that are allowing it to come out would equilibrate. It would either be that it's used up all of its energy and then it stops moving, or it could be that it gets plugged and that stops it moving. So yes, there'll be a time, if that is all that is involved in the eruption, and if there's nothing new comes in, that's it. It will either stop with a dome or it stop with an open crater, and that's it. So one of the things that we will be looking for very closely is if there's any evidence of something from deeper coming into add to the system. We don't have that yet. So, but we still, even though it's a 3-month eruption going on, we're still into the early phases of the explosive component of it. So things could change still. And one of the things we look for closely is a change. And as I said, something slightly has changed over the last 24, 48 hours. And that's indicative of maybe we'll see something slightly different. I don't think fundamentally different at this. You're going to have either explosions or no explosions. And that's what you have. I don't think we're out to the explosive phase yet. But in terms of whether or not when it will stop, which is what you're essentially asking, I think it will stop at some point. But when, I don't think we don't think currently for how this volcano behaves, it will go on for years, still like in a Montserrat situation. It will go on for probably weeks, months, probably a little bit longer than that. But it would not be indefinite. It will stop at some point, yes.
Prime Minister?
No, the formulation, the new or some indicative of some amendments or some alteration or some new process which is going on, something new, in the sense that you say that they're more, the distance still stay for the tremors, but for the earthquakes, you're seeing more of them.
Yes.
Now, historically, to the extent that you have the data, when the volcanoes behaves like this, is there historical precedent and how that emerged historically? If you can draw parallels between that or no, or that every situation is completely distinct and different.
Yeah. Well, to a certain extent, every eruption has its own particular characteristics. But one of the things that we do, we look at the data that comes in from this eruption and in the context of the eruption and understand what happens, we don't only look at what Soufriere has done in the past, but we look at other volcanoes like Soufriere. And as you will gather, in 79, the techniques and the understanding of how volcanoes like Soufriere operate was different. So when I say that the current sort of slight change we are seeing, it might be indicative of something getting blocked and wanting to be cleared. It's related to the fact that this has been seen at other volcanoes, and that's one of the interpretations of what you see, that this increase in long period and hybrid activity might be related to something, somehow the system getting blocked at the top slightly, and it eventually will clear itself. So yes, there is precedent in the context of the kind of signal, but in terms of Soufriere, I don't think we had that kind of data from Soufriere in 1979. The kind of data that we're collecting now, the way in which the monitoring is set up, it's much more sophisticated. There's a lot more application of different techniques than you had then. So you wouldn't necessarily see exactly the same kind of signal, but we can see signals here that are similar to other volcanoes in other parts of the world, and we could use that to tell us what might be happening here. And that's the basis upon which I'm saying that the increase in the particular kind of events we're having may be suggesting that there's some sort of blockage that will get cleared, or it may be indicative of something slightly more sinister, which is something else coming through. But I think that for now, that's probably the lesser of the two possibilities, we think. But it's something that we're looking at currently.
In short, therefore, we continue not to drop our guard. We resist that temptation.
Yeah.
And do our work, keep planning,
yeah,
and stay out from the red zone.
Yes, and I'd say particularly in the next, until this period where you have had a slight change plays out and sort of tell us what it's doing, I would suggest that anybody that was thinking of doing work in the red zone, and I know people go in and clean their houses, do various things in these quiet periods, I would suggest that they stay out. Let's see what happens before you think of doing that, because we're not quite sure whether this will play out as the same size explosion, an explosion in the first place. We don't know if it will play out like that, or it might be an explosion that be slightly bigger than the ones we have. So it's really, at this point in time, yes, we don't drop our guard, but at this point in time, I'll suggest to people that were thinking of going in today to do things, if they were people, and they shouldn't be, but I'll tell them to stay back. At least let's see what happens today, and if it's not resolved by tomorrow, we'll see how the signals say.
As a result, I listened to you very carefully, Richie, for guidance in respect of public policy, because as a consequence of what you were saying yesterday, I had a conversation with the Commissioner of Police.
Mm-hmm.
And do we have security personnel at the entry to the red zone? The security has not been of the tightest in allowing access to the red zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yesterday it was decided that he would move the police officers who are at Mount Young Bridge and put them at Rabaka, because you have, though Georgetown is in the red zone, you still have a number of people in Georgetown, because it's at the lower end of the red zone.
Yeah.
But where the real danger would be people who go over in Rabaka.
Yes, that's correct.
Similarly, the real danger would be those who go beyond Belial.
Yes.
Because people have to go up to the prisons. Because Belial, Spring Village, for instance, is in the yellow zone.
It's in the yellow. Yes.
Yes, but so we have to make sure that at the checkpoint, we for persons who are going above the into the red zone, that we make the security tighter, at least the dangerous red zone.
Yeah.
And only if the NEMO director or the commissioner of police or the minister of national security give the permission to go in, and in any event, the persons who are going in, who have gotten permission, to say who they are and what they're going to do. Because we would want to know, so that if they're going up there, the security authorities, NEMO or NEMO, have a list of the persons, so that if anything were to happen, and to have like telephone numbers of persons in the party, that you can be able to give NEMO or the Commissioner of Police an indication that, look, something untoward is going to happen. So you're up there, even with permission, you must get out immediately.
Yeah.
So we're trying to see if we can tighten the extent of the security. I know some persons would feel chafed by this, but I believe that we have to do it in accordance with your advice to have real safety. I don't know if you agree with that kind of an approach.
Yeah, as you said, the key areas in terms of extreme risk are the areas north of the Rabaca River. And it has to do mainly with the fact that it's well known that the Rabaca is a primary path for pyroclastic flows. And more so now, given that we have a lot of deposits up on the mountain, the Rabaca is a place where lahars will come down, mud flows. And the scenario can play out where you can have a mud flow comes down the Rabaca, and therefore you can't cross for whatever reason, because it damaged the bridge or it did something and you can't get across. And then a pyroclastic flow comes down, and then you're caught on the side, and you don't want to be doing that. So the key areas from in terms of risk is anywhere physically on the volcano, which is north of the Rabaca and sort of, areas that the Fitzhughes and north of that kind of area. Those are the key areas.
North of Petit Bodel, you will say, or Petit Bodel would be included in that. We must, because people are still in Petit Bodel.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, extreme areas are the areas sort of north of Fitzhughes, Chateaubriand, right? But
yes.
I mean, that we can on the fringes when we deal with that there. So the key thing is to make sure that people resist the temptation to go into those areas.
Yes.
When you go further back, really, the main hazard is excessive amount of ash, not the pyroclastic flows and surges and mud flows and things like that. Really, once you come off the mountain itself, the things that will kill people immediately, you're away from them. But as you go further back south, the things that would affect you, really, the excessive ash that you might have.
I don't want. Just 1 minute. Let me ask.
Okay.
So,
Professor, while Prime Minister deals with something there on the side. Another question coming in asks about the testing of the ash. Have you been able to receive the results for that?
No, we actually have only just gotten them to. They asked her to take a long journey because of transportation issues. It's left here, I think, about 2 or 3 days ago by boat and got to Trinidad, and it's going to be split up into various components and then go to various people in the UK. The initial analysis really is to see how much the ash has fresh material that might be same or different than what we sampled before. Remember, we sampled the dome. And also, very importantly, to see if it has any aspects of it that might be of concern in terms of health issues. So we haven't gotten results yet, but it's on its way to the UK mostly, where it's going to be tested. Some of the testing is going to be done in Jamaica and Mona, and some of it, I believe, in Barbados. So some aspects of it. But it's on its way. We don't have any results yet, but we hope to have that soon. So that,
I'm sorry, Richie. When I was talking to you there,
yeah,
I had to just tell one of my security officers something. Something had come up,
yeah.
so that's when they came into the studio. So there was a little break there. I couldn't talk both to the people and yourself and talk to him. I'm sorry about that, but
Yeah, that's fine.
these things happen. No, I wanted to make the point that I don't want the state authorities to be complicit in anybody getting injured
Yeah,
or worse through a porous border going up. Because there were reports that even at Mount Young, that police officers there, good people, depending on who you have, would be very diligent. And sometimes they just wave you through without checking.
yeah,
So that we just want to tighten it a little bit. Well, tighten it more than a little bit. And to know who gets permission to go up into the area, and who, just in case anything were to happen, you can give as early a warning as possible. Because in the same way that you gave me the advice at 4 o'clock or thereabouts, that is on Thursday the 8th,
yeah,
to make the evacuation order, because you saw some things different deteriorating. In the same way, you presumably would be able to see if there was anything deteriorating further, which would require people who happen to go up there for a short period of time, that they must get out immediately.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think our overall recommendation is that the red zone be the red zone, full stop, and people should not go there. But and so it's never going to be safe for people to go there. What might happen is that there might be periods when the risk the risk can be managed in a particular way. But people need to understand that once you go into the red zone when the volcano is erupting, you are at risk of nasty things happening.
Yes.
Now, we would try as much as we can to see changes that might happen. As I'm telling you now, there's a change. I'm not quite sure what it means. But there's no guarantee. That's why it has to remain sort of as strict as possible in terms of people understanding what it means, that they're putting themselves at risk. I understand the limitation, but we will try to detect that as much as possible. But there's never a guarantee because of the amount of uncertainty in this whole operation in terms of understanding what the volcano is doing. There's never a guarantee that you would foolproof have a pre-warning other than what you have now, which is saying that it's erupting anywhere in the volcano is dangerous, even though it appears not to be sometimes because it's quiet. So anytime anybody individually take a chance to go up there, they need to bear in mind that you're putting yourself at additional risk, no matter what you do. So once you understand that if you go in those areas, you have to have systems in place that you could extract yourself fast, that you know what you're doing. Once you already understand that, well, then it's up to you individually to decide what you want to do. But in terms of expecting, I don't think it should be expected that the scientific team can, other than what we have done, give you any specific warning that something is about to happen. It's no guarantee. We'd like to do that. We'd like to give you a guarantee, but we can't other than what we see. The system is dynamic. It changes.
Yes.
It just slightly sometimes it changes in a major way. We have been so far fortunate that it has changed and has given us clear signals when it's changed, and we have detected that. But, we have only been, I keep saying that, people, one of the things that people have done is that people have looked at the last 200 and something years and said that Soufriere tend to erupt at a particular time of the year, and they make all kind of correlations. I counter that by saying that Soufriere has been operating for tens of thousands of years. And if you try to look at what it's done in the last 200 years and think you know Soufriere, you're fooling yourself, because Soufriere could suddenly decide that it want to change.
Yes.
So the same way, we have been monitoring it for the last 3 or 4 months. We've been looking at it in detail for the last few weeks, and we have managed to see things that sort of help to make decisions that save lives. But we're not going to fool ourselves to think that we know Soufriere so much that every time something happens or is about to happen, that we're going to see it. So I just want people to understand that fully, that this system is dynamic, it changes, it's uncertain, And we do the best we can, but you individually have to also do the best you can. Take the advice, take the measures in place, put the measures in place that you can protect yourself if you find the need to. And I understand there's a need to go into certain areas. You need to have a plan of what you're going to do if something happens.
Absolutely. And the question of the you know the risk, and you have systems to get you out quickly, because we have been up there with the media, the world media, and our local and regional media, so that people will see what is happening, because it's important for the effort at mobilizing resources and so on, public policy considerations.
Yeah.
But that has its limits too, and you have to be careful how far you go. I, for instance, didn't go past Sandy Bay, and that is only because they had cleared a part of the road.
Yeah.
So that if anything, you can get out within a reasonable time, and you make people know that you are there.
Yeah.
But this is why we're trying to tighten it. I know we're not going to succeed completely, but to the extent that we put better systems in place, in order to manage the entry into the area.
Yeah.
All right. Any question has come in on WhatsApp?
Yes, we have questions actually from our live stream. One for Professor Robertson says, could you explain the difference or differences between the Soufriere volcano and the one that is currently erupting in Iceland?
Okay. I'll try to, although I don't know that much about the Icelandic one, but in a general sense, I do, in that the fundamental difference is the composition of the material that's involved and the setting that is erupting from. The Icelandic volcano is more less viscous and more runny, more basaltic, more of a particular composition that allows it to flow out and flow rather than explode so much. It does have explosions, but they tend to have less energy than ours necessarily. So the fundamental difference is the composition of the material and the extent to which its gas that's in the magma itself comes out easily or not. Ours tend to be much more sticky. It doesn't move fast. And the gas particularly, it has a lot of gas in it that doesn't necessarily, it's not easy to come out. It doesn't, it's one that can pressurize and can explode versus the Icelandic one, which flows more. So one is what's called a subduction zone volcano, one where you have different parts of the earth dipping on each other, and the conditions there create a particular kind of volcanism that tends to be very violent, very explosive, while the other one is one where plates are moving apart and things are upwelling and it's coming out. So but the fundamental difference really is the composition of material, and volcanoes really, the way in which they manifest themselves at the surface is to a large extent determined by the chemistry of the material, the magma, what it's composed of, and to a large extent, how much gas, how much what we call volatiles it has in it, and the ease with which it comes out. If the gas is able to come out freely and it doesn't get a situation where it pressurizes, then it often flows out or it comes out without explosions. But if it can't, then it explodes. And in our case, as you know, we create domes, we produce lots of domes, and the domes basically plug the system. And therefore, and because of the fact that ours doesn't move very fast, the tendency is for it to produce domes that plug itself and therefore stop the gas from coming out as easily as it can, and therefore pressure builds up. The next thing you have is explosions, while the Icelandic ones doesn't build up like that. It just flows out, and you have the nice runny lava flows that it's a spectacle that people could go and see. So in the case of the Icelandic one, from a safety perspective, you could actually get closer to them and still be safe than ours. In the case of Soufriere, you have to move away from it because it tends to explode, while the Icelandic ones flows, doesn't explode. It's still the same magma, it's still very hot, it's still dangerous if you touch it, it will burn you. But the way in which it moves, you're able to at least from a public perspective, and see it you're able to get closer to it and deal with it differently. I mean, the material in the end also produce hard rock that does damage, but in a different kind of way than ours.
I see another question here asking if the volcano can become extinct like the old Soufriere, and there's a chance of a new one being created. That's a question coming in by WhatsApp.
Yeah. Yes, it can. It can become extinct, and if the system, if the source of the magma below has still sufficient gas-rich magma and sufficient material, it will simply punch away to the surface, slightly different than where it used to. However, Soufriere is still relatively, it's not that old in volcano terms, and the kind of activity that we're seeing from it suggests that it still has a lot of energy in it. So there's no indication that it's heading towards extinct state. If anything, within the last 100 years, it's become a lot more dynamic. It has had, if you think of it, it has had more explosive and more non-explosive eruption than it had in the previous 100 years. Before 1902, before the 1900s, Soufriere had at least one explosive eruption every 100 years or so. Since then, it's, plus or minus probably 20, 30 years. But since then, it has had 1902, 1971, 1979, and now 2021. So it's gotten more dynamic and it does things more often, and that's not suggestive of something that is waning. If it's heading towards extinct state, it will have bigger gaps in between any kind of eruptive activities has. So I know we'd like to see that, but I don't think it's happening in any of our lifetimes and even our grandchildren's lifetimes.
Right. Another quick question. It says, can you, Professor, put to rest the discussion on the drilling of the geothermal having no effect on the explosive eruption in Soufriere?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's amazing how much that comes up and how much both myself and my colleagues in seismic have addressed it. I think even before the Soufriere was active, we were being asked about it. And I've made the analogy that the geothermal, I look at it in the context of the human body. And the source for the volcanism is like deep beneath the surface of your body, sort of you think of your heart, right inside the core of your structure. While the way in which you are tapping into geothermal is really tapping into the hot rock that is heating fluids that is above that, right? So it's a bit like sticking a needle into your skin and thinking that needle sticking into your skin is somehow going to touch your heart. That's how the dimensions are. So the point is that the geothermal activity was trying to get at circulating fluids at a very shallow depth compared to where the magma is coming from. The thing that is driving this system, this eruption here, we think, is somewhere around 10, 15 kilometers beneath the surface, probably a little bit shallower than that, if anything. It's at least 10 kilometers or so. While the geothermal, I believe the deepest well probably went down to less than 3 kilometers, 3,000 meters. So it's, and what it was tapping was not the magma. It wasn't getting anywhere close to any magma. The magma was deep beneath the surface. What it was tapping into is the hot rock, because the magma would have heated the surrounding rock, and that heated rock would then have heated circulating fluid. So you have a magma chamber, and around it for several kilometers you might have hot rock, and then that hot rock would interact with water that came from above, and that water would touch the hot rock that is around the magma chamber, and that water would then be used to generate energy. So it's much further removed from the magma chamber itself. And the fact that you are accessing that doesn't affect what's happening in the magma chamber. Geothermal has been successfully applied in areas which have ongoing volcanic eruption. Iceland is a case in point. Icelandic volcanoes erupt all the time. You've seen that. New Zealand, and they have serious geothermal operations, and they don't affect each other because they just operate at different levels. They operate at different depths, and also they interact with different kinds of materials than the magma. The magma chamber is deep beneath the surface and is operating based on time scales that have to do with plate tectonics, that have to do with the movement of tectonic plates at a larger scale than the geothermal is operated in. So it should not have affected. I can't see scientifically how it would have affected it. It's not like you were drilling into the magma chamber. If you were doing that, I suggest to you that the drill would have been burnt and destroyed long before it gets anywhere close to the chamber. It would have been destroyed at the hot rock stage, not even the chamber. And so, you know, I understand why people think that, because it makes sense. You have a volcano, you drill into it, then it explodes, and it must be connected. But there are lots of things that happened together that are coincidental and not causative. It's a bit like like saying that the volcano erupts at a particular time of the year, a particular day in the year. The fact that it happens, if this volcano has been erupting 13th of April for the last 100 years, that doesn't mean that it's because of something. It's just coincidental. You have to prove that. And in the case of geothermal, both at this volcano, at other volcanoes, there's no indication scientifically that they should affect each other in terms of getting a volcano going. And certainly in this case, we don't think it did.
Prime Minister?
I don't know if that puts you to rest, but I suspect
Yes.
I would keep on having that question.
Yes.
We have it
I'm
again,
not surprised, and that's
since
fine.
We've had that question twice for the morning, actually 3 times.
Yes. And it doesn't matter how many times you say it. There are persons who haven't heard it and they will ask it again and again. And that is why you just have to re-emphasize the truth on an ongoing basis. Well, thanks very much, Richie.
Okay.
God bless you.
All right. Yes, you too.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks very much, Professor
All right.
Robertson. Prime Minister?
I just want, very briefly, because I have a series of appointments this morning again, connected to La Soufriere. There are a number of persons who ask me the question about what is the estimate of the damage. And I keep saying that, yes, it's too early to give anything other than the most preliminary of estimates. And there are people on the ground now, and I'm meeting some this morning, the Director General of Finance and Planning meeting them, I'm meeting them. We have teams, and we're working together to get very preliminary estimates. But I want to give you some ideas to what is at risk. On April the 13th, that is to say 4 days after the first of the explosive eruptions, the World Bank has a team known as the Disaster Resilience Analytics and Solutions Team, what is known as the DRAS, D-RAS, Disaster Resilience Analytics and Solutions Team. And they do what is called, they prepared a note, what is called a grade note, GRADE. GRADE is an acronym meaning, it's a long hyphenated formulation. Global Rapid Post-Disaster Damage Estimation, GRADE. Global Rapid Post-Disaster Damage Estimation, GRADE. And what they do is to give you an assessment as to the assets which are at risk and some preliminary analysis of the direct damages for the assets which are at risk. And but it doesn't provide, because there are so many imponderables, they don't give you the overall economic impact, including the question of the resulting loss of income and the cost to maintain the social safety nets, to feed people, and the like. So I'm just going to address what the issue, the assets which are at risk. They estimated, the World Bank team estimated that in the red and orange zone, these are very preliminary numbers, the total built assets at risk in the red and the orange zone, which are the persons evacuated, those assets at risk amount to $387.5 million, almost $400 million US. Those are assets at risk. It doesn't mean that those assets at risk going to be damaged to the extent of 400 million US dollars. In the red zone alone, the replacement value estimated by this team of the residential buildings which are at risk in the red zone alone is 64 million US. The non-residential buildings at 106 million US. And the infrastructure at 83 million US. In the high pyroclastic flow areas and the surges and the mud flows and so on, the capital stock at risk there is to the building and infrastructure is 188 million US. Now, what they went on to do in a series of assumptions is to say that given similar magnitudes, events and exposure, their preliminary analysis suggests that direct damages for the eruption, for the buildings, infrastructure, and agriculture and forestry would be over 100 million US. So when I say that this is going to be hundreds of millions of Eastern Caribbean dollars, you will see that only in relation to risk to for the buildings, infrastructure, agriculture, and forestry. The World Bank is saying preliminarily over 100 million US. That is 300 million EC dollars. But that doesn't take into account the time you have to feed people. The amount of money you have to feed people, all the costs associated with the shelters, all the associated costs which will come now for the replanting of agriculture and forestry. Because this is you're talking about direct damage to the assets which are there. So it is important to appreciate how the persons who do this go about it. They identify things which are at risk. And then consequential losses, which are huge in these circumstances. And it depends on how long we have to keep people in shelters and how long it's going to take to clean up and to get back into the area and for people to do their work as per normal. Those are some of the numbers which are being crunched now, and they can only be rough estimates. This reconstruction is going to take a long period of time. And when people asked me earlier, and I said, well, in relation to La Soufriere, when I say in 4 months' time, this activity, we will see whether we can go back to some normalcy. I'm talking about actual eruptions, because that is the science. That is not for rebuilding. Because obviously, purely as a practical matter, you go into the area, you have to clean up. All the banana plants which you have there, you have to chop them out. The suckers there, I watch most of them, they look dead already. That means you got to dig that up. You have to replant. And from the time you replant, banana is 9 months before you get a bunch of bananas from which you can can boil to get to eat your banana, for the banana to be full. Sweet potato is 4 months. Trees which are gone, fruit trees. Some breadfruit trees would spring back, would come back, depending on the extent, but some of them would mash up. Breadfruit tree take a long time to grow. Other fruit trees and the like. And as Professor Robertson says yesterday, the mud flows which you're going to have is going to last us, he tells us, beyond 2022. Because not all the material is going to come down one time. So we are in for a pretty long haul. There are persons who are accustomed to instant coffee, Milo, instant chocolate. People who are accustomed to fast food, whether it's KFC or pizza. This is not going to be Milo. It ain't going to be Nescafe. It's not going to be fast food. This a meat hard for bile. As Gao says, is that this one is going to be a long haul. But we have to put ourselves together to get it done. I just wanted to begin by giving this, because there are persons who I have seen, and I as you do things, there is so much mischief, I've been advised, by some persons on social media and people on telephones and the like. It doesn't matter how much I tell them to stop it, they're not going to stop it. What I have to say is that persons who are listening and who are dealing with this thing, keep your head on. And don't allow anybody come with any foolishness to kerfuffle you. Deal with real things in this real world. Because it seems to me that there are some people who all they want to do is to create mischief and cause confusion and to generate a complaining industry. There are a lot of people who are actively in the middle doing very good work. Nurses, doctors, police officers, teachers who are in shelters, people who are volunteering to cook, and so on and so forth. That you're going to find hiccups, that you're going to find limitations, that you're going to find challenges to be resolved on a daily basis, yes. But I'll give you examples how people can cause unnecessary problems for others. You take the distribution of food. The Ministry of Social Development is packaging food, non-perishables, and send them out. And they're doing it, packages supposed to last for a week. 25, 30 pounds or more. They have devised a system and they're fine-tuning it. Where they are at Camden Park, people who in neighboring areas can turn up at Camden Park because they have their people who are registered, people who are in homes, people who have evacuated are in homes. They have names they can get. Then, for persons who are not in that immediate vicinity, I think people all, I think from Clay Valley come wrong. They do that at Camden Park. Persons who are in East St. George, they would ask them to go at a location in Caliqua. Clearly, they're trying to fine-tune that so that they don't just do Caliqua. Because if you're in Diamond, if you're in Brighton, it's not easy for you to take a 25 or 30 pound box to go there or go up in Glen. But they're trying to do the decentralization. And then, of course, they have an additional system where they put stuff in a truck, in a vehicle, and they go and distribute. I know that somebody will say, well, why don't they do it to every home individually? The man who is not in the middle. But you have at the moment about 7,000 persons who are in private homes registered. If you say 4 persons on an average to each home, and you don't have maybe 3 persons, you're talking about a number around 2,000 plus. If it's 4, it's close to 2,000. You're not going to be able to do that. So persons themselves also have to make an effort to get to a particular point in time. But that is difficult in itself. But when they put out the call for persons to come, there are other persons who will call, they say, oh, somebody from Connery getting food in Caliqua. I'm using my village as an example, which is just at the border of the red zone, just below the red zone. A number of persons have moved out, but there are people there still, and most people still there at Connery. But you have people who are having hardship there. Somebody will call and say, well, Mary from Connery getting food in Caliqua, getting a package in Caliqua, but Mary from Connery may be in a house in that area. So somebody now calls Elizabeth or Tom and say, Connery people getting food in Caliqua, and they turn up. And some people are doing it mischievously. Some people are doing it innocently. I'm just saying, just listen to the people who are making the calls from NEMO or from the Ministry of Social Development. Social Development also is packaging food to send out. So too, Red Cross. So too, meals are being sent by the World Central Kitchen, which we have here. So just cooperate and let us be orderly and disciplined in these matters. It's already such a big problem, a big administrative, managerial problem. But a person sitting down as a keyboard warrior don't understand any of these things. And they start to do their blasting and taking to task people who are volunteering for very long hours, including their weekends. Please, let's have a sense of social solidarity and don't break it up. You remember earlier I said I'm encouraging people to send money to their family. And most people doing that from overseas. I'm saying be cautious in sending individual packages, because the individual packages will cause a lot of congestion on the port, already creating difficulties. Let me give you an example. World Central Kitchen, which is an NGO, non-governmental organization in the hemisphere, well, I think globally, I've been advised that they're doing 4,000 meals per day through 9 restaurants, and we have allowed them to build to put an operation out at the hospitality center out at Diamond. 2 days ago, I was advised by the person who heading the team here that they want to ramp up to 10,000 meals a day. That would be an extraordinary operation in itself. They have 4 containers which came yesterday from Tropical. The person who contacted me, the person who is on the ground, contacted me through my security officers because I gave them my numbers if they have a problem. Got a call this morning. Customs says that the kind of load they have there dealing with, they don't know. I'm talking about the kind of traffic already with other things. They don't know if they could manage it as early as tonight. No, there are 4 containers which came in on Tropical. With an operation of the kind they're dealing with, it is imperative that they get their containers out. So naturally, I have to put a call to the Comptroller of Customs to see within the extent of the load that he has, to see how he can facilitate. I can't do more than that. And that is transmitted to the person who is in charge of World Central Kitchen. That's an example. But if you don't know what is happening, you are in your own little world, not knowing all the problems and assuming that you have the solution to everything, and you go off and you will start to abuse the people who work at the port. You start to abuse the customs people. Well, abusing me is par for the course. I mean, that doesn't bother me. You know what I mean? None of that bothers me, because I have been through so many battles. None of that has absolutely no effect on me. Well, I don't read it, so it doesn't. And if anybody come telling me about it, I said, listen, talk to me about something now. Serious. So I'm appealing for all persons of goodwill to listen carefully to the authorities. If I say something and you want, and it's not properly explained. Say, well, Ralph has said something, or so-and-so has said something. Let's get an explanation. Last weekend, you had a newspaper. Wouldn't say which one. And I heard Joel Providence talking about it on a program on Sunday. And I went and looked for the newspaper. 4 stories, 4 headline stories. Every single one of them nitpicking and negative. Every single one of them. 7 days, into a huge natural disaster. None of them is of any consequence. Not one. Don't affect people who are inside of the shelters. Don't affect people who are in their homes, who have evacuated. It doesn't help them in any way. But I expect, I'm in a competitive political environment, but I will hope that the public would look askance and have no appetite for that kind of a divisive foolishness. I'm sorry that my language is sharper this morning on some of these things, but I have to put at rest that particular kind of, to push away that kind of negative attitude for all of us to work together on this business. The number of persons in shelters have reached, up to yesterday, nearly 7,000 also. Because there are persons who are in private accommodation who are not registered. Several of them have gone into shelters, because the attractiveness of the shelters, broadly speaking, of course, some are better run than others, some are better accommodated than others. And we are seeking every day to see how we can improve these systems, which are there for the long haul. And by all means, make constructive suggestions as to what can be done. Not to come and be involved in this petty complaining and divisiveness and so on and so forth. Because I often ask when somebody tell me something about this shelter, I say, okay, what have you done to help? And some normally say, well, I want to help. And I put them into, others say, well, I only bring it to your attention. There's nothing I can do. I have what I have. I have enough problems on my own and so on and so forth. And that's fine. I'm not telling you deal with your problems. But don't become part of the complaining industry. Similarly, I'm appealing to people again. It is better if you send money. You overseas in New York or Boston or Washington or wherever in the United States, we know you want to send things for your family. And it attracts no duty. The barrels are free. And I remove the $25 charge. People may say it's contradictory for me to do all that and still tell people not to send it. But I can do that for those persons who are determined to send, but I can persuade you not to send. Because it is better to send the money rather than to send these little multiplicity of little packages inside of a container. Because it's going to jam up the port. You have a whole heap of people there, and you're going to have frustration in another few days, weeks. You're going to hear, well, my barrel comes since 2 weeks ago, since 7 days ago, and I can't get it out. I don't know what Ralph doing. I don't know what Bish and John at the port doing. without grasping the magnitude of the supplies which are coming in bulk in order to take care of essentially these 14,000 people, and the number would rise. Please. I have gone past 9 o'clock. I didn't intend to go past 9 o'clock this morning, but and just cut out the nonsense lies about Ralph, why you send money? Because you want to put your hand on the money. Your name John Brown in New York, you send it to Mary Jones, your girlfriend, or your grandmother. You send by Western Union. How Ralph go get your hand any money? The fee which is charged is not charged by Ralph, and it's charged by Western Union. We're trying to see if we can get the money services to reduce the extent of the fee. And what we tried to do, as you see with MoneyGram, you notice we provide additional facility for them, and we want to decentralize so that people don't have to line up so long to get the money. These are things which we are concerned about. Then you get the thing that unless you send it to Nemo, Ralph say you have to send it to Nemo. I never said that. On the contrary, I don't want anybody to send individual packages to Nemo. I don't. You hear what I'm telling you? Because Nemo has no capacity to deliver individual packages. And the truth is this: if you're sending things to Nemo, you may be sending things to Nemo that Nemo doesn't want. So that just be sensible about this thing. I'm not telling you not to send your stuff to your family. I'm just saying that at this phase of the recovery, it is better, of the humanitarian effort, it's better you send money. Why are you going to send? Why are you going to put in a box water when we have a lot of water coming in from the region? Or you can send the money and people can buy water here, because we have removed all the duties on water, everything, from Mountaintop too. Because Ken De Silva had said that the way it was done and he back in production could put them at a disadvantage. So the bottles they're bringing in, no duty, nothing on it, none of those things. So we have had our fiscal policy in line to facilitate things. Stuff coming in from places by ship. Supermarkets are ordering more. Please. And we have a number of agencies on the ground who are helping to coordinate and the like, World Food Program, the whole UN agency systems. Be generous to your families, and the best way you can be generous to your families is to send the money. That's the best way at the moment. I just want to make that particular point in the phase at which we are. I don't know if there's any question on WhatsApp which I could answer very quickly to respect our listeners.
I think we have one here from a fellow member of the local media, and it says, Prime Minister, is there any consideration being given to open lands to relocate people in the north who might want to resettle in a safer part of the country? Of course, that's later on. The same way Man in the Village was created.
Yes. Well, we would like to, we are already beginning to identify parcels of lands, because you may recall an earlier discussion which I had with Professor Robertson, about migratory patterns internally after the 1902 and the 1979 eruptions. And you would recall that I said that that has implications for housing, lands, housing, health delivery, education. Let's say, for instance, at Connery, where there is still some state lands. If some people are relocated there, you're going to need, depending on how many, the primary school would have to be larger. The primary school at the moment has about 100 people, 100 students, because it's a small, the villages at the moment in Connery is small. If you get lands in Byra, and persons, maybe, the school is fairly large there compared to the population. Maybe not, you might have to add. But the clinics, you'll have to expand them more. And then persons would say, well, Connery is in the orange zone. I don't really want to go in the orange zone. We want to come further south. If you do that, availability of land and so on, and we have to talk about how we have to do high-rise buildings, because new and different ways in which things have to be done. All of this we have to reassess, because if you don't have land space on the ground, you have space in the air. So there are all of these questions which we have to find the appropriate answers in all the circumstances. Of course, the bulk of people are going to go back into the red zone. You build your house there. You're accustomed to it. You like the community and so on and so forth. I built my house at Goss, which is in the orange zone. I haven't gone there since the hurricane, since the volcano, but I've seen photographs, and there's plenty ash. I have a lot of cleaning to do, but I like there to live when I'm finished with this, with what I'm doing here, and hopefully I will have a good old age. I don't know what the Lord has in store for me. So different people will have different things in their head. But even if you're doing it, Rosa was built up a lot after the 1979 uprising, eruption. So too was Sharps. So too was Sharps. So too was Glen. Rosebank was built up after 1902. I had family across the Dry River in Orange Hill and Overland. But they came down. Some came down to the Byra area, some went down to New Grounds after 1902. I have other family who's still up there. So even some would move and some would move. That's the nature of life. That's the nature of individual persons and so on and so forth. We don't have a situation like in Montserrat where areas have become a complete wasteland. As Professor Robertson says, that's not what we have here. We have a different situation. Sorry, you have maybe other questions?
Yes, someone is asking about, in regards to agriculture, the importing of seeds or seedlings to aid in crop diversification. Will this be waived going forward?
Absolutely. They're going. Saboto Soboto presented a paper to Cabinet yesterday. We would give full consideration to that paper on Wednesday next week because it required some interrogation. The numbers required some interrogation by the Ministry of Finance officials. Because we want, some of those things are going to be inside of the estimates and the supplementary estimates and supplementary appropriation bill, which we intend to take to Parliament, hopefully on the 11th of May. I hope we get it there in time, but there's a lot of technical work needs to be done. And that would not be the first. I want to indicate to the people of this country that is not going to be the first supplementary estimates and supplementary appropriation bill for this year, because this one is going to address some immediate issues of humanitarian relief, this particular relief stage. And there will be more, including for the recovery stage and reconstruction. This is a long haul, and a lot of work has to be done on it, and that is why we don't do things to create unnecessary mischief. Just like, for instance, the young man who went up at La Soufriere. I've been advised that the police have him in custody. I don't know whether he's going to be charged or not. But yeah, because of that, the police had to go and look for him. The manpower required for that. They now have to detain him. Manpower required for that. I have no doubt that the Commissioner of Police is holding discussions with the Director of Public Prosecution as to what charge to lay him, if to lay any charge at all. Those are things which are outside of the political directorate, but I'm just talking about how the process works. And that's manpower. For what? Because you want to go up to have some likes? Come on.
Okay, Prime Minister, I believe we can just squeeze this one in because
Sure.
I've seen it pop up a few times. A status update on the Argyle International Airport with the cleanup operations there.
Yes. I was told that it is likely that we will have American Airlines coming in on Saturday, but I will have that confirmed today. But that is what I was told was likely yesterday, when I received I was in communication with Glen Beach, who had been from the Tourism Authority, who had been in communication with Costello Robertson, the CEO at Argyle International. So I guess they will probably inform. Either they would have informed American yesterday, or they will do that today, as to how the cleanup is going. All right?
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and thanks to all of the various stations who joined in. We had with us this morning Star Radio, Magic FM, Boom 106, WeFM. On television, we have viewers on IK Television, UWI Television, and VC3 Television, all joining us for this broadcast. This is where we come to the end of this morning's edition of Iron La Soufriere, the morning edition, and we hope that you would join us later this evening at 11 o'clock into 5 tomorrow morning for the overnight edition of Iron La Soufriere.